hope you were channeling vulgarity as long as I was reading it. So, the story is this. I went to the Amazon to do research, and I was on a boat, and every day there were 12 rooms on the boat, and every day they would put the passengers into little open jackboats. And they were about 12 or 15 feet long, and there were either 8 or 10 of us in the boat. And one day, we had been going down these horrible, godforsaken, tiny tributaries that split to the right, to the left, to the right, to the left, to the left, to the left, to the left. So you think if the guy who's running the outboard motor has a heart attack and falls off the back, we're really just, you know, the phrase "up the creek" takes a whole new meaning. And while we were doing this, one of the guests on the boat asked the guide to stop, and then asked him to go a little to the left and a little back, and he stuck his hand in the water and pulled a 15-foot anaconda into the boat. And I'm not afraid of snakes, but guess what? It doesn't mean that I wanted to be in an open boat with a 15-foot anaconda 4 hours away from the boat where my toothbrush was. And you can't get out of the boat. And it turns out this guy was a naturalist, and this is what he did for a living. He went all over the world dragging snakes into boats and picking up terrible things that will bite you and eat you and kill you. And we became great friends. His name is Greg Greer. And if you want to have fun when you go home tonight, Google Mr. Greg's Reptile Roadshow. Because he lives in Atlanta, and he will bring snakes to your Boy Scout troop or to your middle school class. And when I wrote this scene, I originally had Marina kill the snake with a scalpel, because I thought that would be really great, that she would find a little medical bag on the board. And I talked to Greg about it, and after I'd written it, no way. Yeah, exactly. He said it would be like amputating your thigh with an X-Acto knife. It would last for like 2 minutes, and then it would break. And it was like maybe, possibly, with a machete if she went through both coils at once. So it's good to have resources.
Excuse me.
Yes?
Did you stay on the boat with the 15-foot?
Did I have choices?
Well, I mean, did he keep it alive?
Oh my God, Greg, Mr. I love snakes more than my own mother, Greer. Yeah. I mean, there is no getting off the boat in the Amazon. It goes like this: water, vegetation. And the vegetation is like a cement wall. I mean, there's no transitional shore or anything like that. Water, plant. And he kept the snake in the boat for about 20 minutes and gave us a nice little lecture about an anaconda and its teeth and how it had no hinges on the jaw. Why it can take your whole head in. And I asked him if he'd ever been bitten by an anaconda, because of course it's not a poisonous bite, but excruciatingly painful. There's some correlation between, if it's not poisonous, the bite is more painful because there's some anesthetic in the poison. And he said yes, he had once been bitten on the calf. And it was the same thing, you know, he picked it up not close enough to the head, and the snake whipped around and got him on the back of the calf. And he said that what they had to do was take the paddle and work it. It took like an hour to work it in between the calf and the snake to gently pry it off one tiny tooth at a time so it wouldn't be injured. Which is beautiful.
My priority.
Right. Well, and then when we were coming back on the boat, and I didn't know any of this about Greg. I mean, it was after this that we became really good friends. But I remember we were coming back on the boat, and I said, "My God, Greg, how old were you when you picked up your first snake?" And he said, "I was 5." And he was like, "Oh, yeah, that was last year." He's an amazing, amazing person. There was not a plant or a bird or anything in the world that man didn't know the name of. And he looks like Andy Rooney at 60. No, not Andy Rooney, Mickey Rooney. Mickey Rooney, you know, sort of avuncular and short and jolly, and such a lovely person, always with a snake in his hand. At one point we were out in some little village, and they had a red boa constrictor that they had kept, and it was a huge snake, but not, you know, not big around, but just really long and thin. And they had had it for a couple of months, and they used it to take pictures with the tourists. And so I said, how much for the snake? And they said, oh, you know, it was like $8. They would sell me the snake for $8. So I gave him $8, and Greg said he would carry it back, and we brought it back on the boat, and we did a lot of animal liberation, which didn't make the animals feel so much better, but made me feel better. And when we were going back to the boat, we got in the boat, and there was just blood everywhere. I said, Greg, man, you're just blood everywhere. What's going on? And he said, oh, it bit me. I was foolish. I wasn't holding it comfortably, and it sunk into the back of my arm. It was just the whole back of his arm was open, and he hadn't mentioned it. What does that mean? Are you brave? Are you stupid? Are you just a guy who really loves snakes? He's a guy who really loves snakes. I want to tell you what's going on with me, and then we'll have questions, and you can tell me what's going on with you. I'm opening a bookstore. And yay, or you know, but I live in Nashville. Rose, you want to come? And we lost our independent, which wasn't so independent, Davis Kid, which had been our independent 10 years before, but had been purchased 10 years ago by a company named Joseph Bapp that had about 8 or 10 stores, and they moved it into the mall, and it became a 33,000 square foot store, which is too big. And then we lost our Borders last month, which was 30,000 square feet. And so Nashville doesn't have a bookstore. The closest bookstore, we have a Barnes & Noble. It's 20 minutes outside of town. We have a lot of used bookstores, and they don't do me any good. So, you know, it's so weird. I make this book at home in my spare time, and there's no place in my town to sell it. And in fact, I know some people who run a really great frame shop, and they called me 2 months before the book came out, and they said, do you want us to sell your book in the frame shop? So you could at least say to your friends, go to the Beveled Edge, and you can buy a book. So it's really been such an interesting time to go on book tour and to be in stores and to walk into a store and be like, okay, how many square feet do you have? And everybody's telling me that you have to do other things. And knitting. I could teach knitting. I actually, it's the one thing I'm really good at, is I can knit anything. In fact, I have kind of a compulsive knitting disorder. If I start a sweater, I just can't stop. I don't know about the part where you bring a whole bunch of toddlers in on Wednesday morning. I could do the knitting part, and somebody else would do that. And anyway, so I'm really feeling the importance of the independent bookstore. I really do think there is a place for it. I think that a store this size